Welcome to another recording of the How I'm Building This podcast, where we interview startup founders that are in the thick of building their businesses. We learn from their mistakes and get practical tips to overcoming challenges. Today we have Arjun from Doola. Hey Arjun, how are you today? Thanks so much for giving me some time.
Fantastic. Very excited to be chatting. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, thank you so much. Before we jump into the business, would love to learn, Arjun, where did you grow up and what really got you into entrepreneurship?
No one believes this, but I was actually born in London and I grew up in Cardiff, Wales. And I used to speak Welsh and I used to have a British accent. So technically my hometown is the UK. But before that, my parents both grew up in India, in Madras, Chennai. They're both doctors. They moved to England to start practicing medicine. And then when I was 6 years old, they decided to immigrate to Boston. And you win some, you lose some. I lost the British accent, but I didn't get a Boston accent. So you win some, you lose some there. And truthfully, when I moved to Boston, I called that home. I didn't know why we moved to the US. And eventually I asked my parents when I was older, hey, why did we move here? Because all I knew at the time was that people talked a little different. The cartoons on the TV switched from Clifford the Big Red Dog to SpongeBob. But when I asked my parents, they said it was mostly because of, as cheesy as it sounds, as cliche as it sounds, the American dream. This concept of in America, there's upwards mobility, this cultural mixing pot, which doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And this concept of entrepreneurship, or hey, in America, you can come here and do whatever you want if you put your mind to it. This ethic of hard work really being imbued from an early age, definitely part of an immigrant mindset for sure. But very grateful to be here in the US and grateful for that decision my parents made many years ago too.
That's awesome. Was there a pivotal moment growing up where you were like, you know what, one day I'm going to start my own thing?
Well, when I was 6 years old, I dreamed about helping people start LLCs. That's a complete joke. Okay, that's a complete joke. Okay, just to be serious, I didn't know what an LLC was 4 years ago when we started Doola. To be completely real, I hope that doesn't turn anyone away from using us for bookkeeping or taxes or analytics for your Shopify or Amazon business. But the truth is, I do believe generalists start companies, specialists scale companies. And there's probably more to go in there, but there wasn't this light bulb moment when I said, hey, I'm going to start helping people start businesses or scale e-commerce businesses. But I do think entrepreneurship is something where once you get the itch, it's impossible to unscratch. And the very quick story for how I got the itch is in college, I dreamed about making this social fitness app. It's kind of like ClassPass combined with Instagram for posting and recording workouts. And once I had that itch, it was hard to actually unscratch it. And then in San Francisco, I kid you not, my commute to work every day was past the Uber office, past the Twitter office, take a right, past the LinkedIn office, take another right on Brennan Street where I worked. Dropbox, Airbnb, Pinterest. And every day you see that and realize these companies were started by normal people, don't get me wrong, ambitious, visionary, hardworking. And it makes you think, hey, maybe I can do it. So truth is, the first thing didn't work. The second thing didn't work. The third thing didn't work. The fourth thing worked. And in hindsight, I can say why, but you can only connect the dots in hindsight. So at that point, realized entrepreneurship and there's a huge opportunity which we're now solving. But I'd be lying if I said I was 6 years old thinking about starting LLCs, even if that would sound cool.
You all did YC in the summer of 2020. Why did you all decide to go through an accelerator? And what was YC like for you?
The truth here is I didn't know anything else. And this is going to sound silly because today we serve founders on over 175 countries, over 10,000 founders, Amazon businesses, Shopify businesses, people starting and scaling e-commerce businesses. And the vast majority of them, 95% plus, are LLCs or bootstrap businesses, meaning they have not raised venture capital. The truth is, I didn't know what the word bootstrap meant when we started Doola. I thought it was like a type of sneaker or shoe or boot. Because in San Francisco, everything around you is raise money, get on TechCrunch, Product Hunt, Hacker News, Y Combinator, Seed, Series A, Series B.5, whatever it is. And that was the only view I had of the world. So to tell you the complete truth, I thought, okay, like when you're going to come up with something, you think of a moonshot, audacious idea and you apply to YC because that's everything around me. That was my commute to work every day. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think some of the most valuable companies in the world, and ultimately I think value comes from the amount of reach and impact you can have. Those come from San Francisco and they have huge, massive outside impacts. But that's the answer is I thought that's what you're supposed to do. So applied to YC. And I think YC is incredible because you're getting the hive mind expertise of partners. You're being around other ambitious people. And I truly think you're the average of the people you spend time with. And I think the third thing is You can hate it or not, but social proof matters in life. And the YC brand and the halo does. Again, people say don't judge a book by the cover. Every person judges a book by the cover. So again, harsh truth, but I think it's true. So why not take the help where you can get it from a mindset, from an education, and from a brand perspective?
That's absolutely fair. So you spoke about, your entire environment being around raising and growing that way. You all, of course, raised a Series A. How did you all decide to work with these investors?
Ultimately, for our Series A, our lead was actually the same lead as our seed round. So we had a really good experience with them. More zooming out though, in terms of which investors to work with. I think the best analogy here is it's kind of like dating into marriage. And I think the analogy there is there's like on the first date, you would never ask someone to get married, but you also wouldn't wait 40 years because that's like 40 years of dating is too long. So I do think with investors that the timelines can be mixed, but you are effectively getting married when an investor comes on because they're coming on your cap table, they're getting equity too. So I didn't really understand this at first, but that's the goal of doing these coffee chats or Zoom calls. You're actually trying to understand, hey, you're kind of dating the investor, trying to say, hey, like, do I like spending time with them? Do I like the way they think? Are we aligned from a values perspective? Are we aligned from a philosophical perspective? And ultimately had an incredible perspective from Nexus Venture Partners, who's our lead investor. Now, like dating too, there can be surprises where like, wait, I thought I was meeting this person, who's this person too. I feel very grateful and blessed that Doola investors have been incredible. But that being said, there are some investors who start one way and maybe end a different way. And that's bound to happen too. So ultimately, I think it's about in life, if you wait for 95% of the data, oftentimes you're too late. You have to make decisions with less data. And I think that's what you're going for. Hey, we've had some conversations. We've been open with each other. Do we think there's a hell yeah fit? And if there's hell yeah, you go for it.
That's awesome. How do you manage those relationships, with those investors in which that you start off in one way and then the direction changes?
Two things. More tactically in terms of how to manage investors. I did a terrible job of this. I just found a solution that works. When we started, I would have Notion docs and Apple Notes and Things 3, which is my note-taking app, and emails and more Notion docs. And I didn't have a system to manage investors, which, like anything, right? I like to think of every Olympian has a goal to win gold. Why doesn't every Olympian win gold? Because your training matters. So you can have the same goal, but you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your system. So every startup wants to raise capital. Why do certain startups raise capital? It's because they have a fantastic product and growth solves everything, but they have investor systems where they chat with investors, they pitch investors, and they're good at doing that. So now I use HubSpot. I have a CRM, tracks every single interaction. I just got pissed off a couple months ago and backfilled everything. So that's a more tactical answer. The question to how do you actually manage if a relationship changes? Look, I think at the end of the day, one of our investors, he put it this way, which I liked. He said, the greatest investors, they only have to do two things: wire money quickly and like your tweets on X or Twitter. And I was like, you know what? The bar is actually pretty low. If you have an investor who does that, it's actually, I would say top 5, top 10 percentile. But all jokes aside, I think like anything, if it starts one way and goes a different route, we're all humans at the end of the day. I think the biggest thing is just, can we keep the relationship without detracting from the business? Because ultimately the investor still has skin in the game and they're still a person too. And I at least don't want to go out of my way to detract after the fact from anyone. We can each kind of just do our own thing. So that's my guidance. But again, maybe I'm not the best person to speak about that.
You just spoke about managing relationships. I think managing relationships and hiring and ensuring that you're building the right team around you is so similar. So I'd love to get your take on hiring. When you're hiring today, what are some of those like soft qualities that you are really looking for? That's one. But then two, how do you really judge for them during the interview process?
Again, I'm probably not the best person to ask about this, but I've learned. So I'll show you what I've learned so far.
Sure.
Every single person, Y Combinator says this, every person says this at later stages, says, you're going to make this mistake as a founder, don't make it. And that's to hire fast, fire slowly. And what happens is it's just you're doing everything. Anyone, I need a body. Anyone can come in and do this. Oh, you're interested in coming and taking a pay cut, joining a startup that has a high chance of failing? Please come. And then the truth is, you do that quickly, and then you realize it's not a perfect fit because it's your first time managing people.
Yeah.
harder to have a tough convo, give more chances than you actually think. And the truth is, a startup is a business. It's not a charity, and that might sound rough. It's also not a university. Like, you don't have time to learn. You need people who can come in and have an impact. So that's, I think, the biggest mistake that I've made. Now, the flip side to that is, okay, how do you properly interview and judge people? And again, I liken it to dating too. I think there's many analogies where you wouldn't interview someone for 4 years, but you also wouldn't do it for 4 minutes, right? Maybe 4 hours, but not 4 minutes.
Yep.
And the biggest thing that I like to do is 5 questions. Why the company? Like, why do you want to work here? Why you? Do not be modest. People can always be nice and modest. Like, remove all modesty. Why are you the best person for this role? When have you made a mistake and what happened, to show that you have humility and mistakes are bound to happen. When's the hardest you've ever worked in your life? I like asking that, because less about like how many hours do you work, more about what fuels you, because seeing the passion in someone's eyes. And then the last one is, let's say we debrief and we come back and say, it was good, but not a great fit. Why is that the case? Then it gives them a chance to actively say, okay, you know what? There are these areas where my experience might be like not quite there, or maybe I don't know about LLC formation, but it allows them to sort of proactively say why there's a fit and then defend it too. Have I gotten it down perfectly? No, but I ultimately think you get better at the pattern recognition of maybe, smooth talker in an interview versus someone who can actually execute. You get better at evaluating talent. You get better at running an interview process. I'll admit this is bad. I used to not do reference checks because I thought, why would someone lie and why would someone not give a reference? That's fantastic. But the truth is, hey, that does happen. So very small things like that. These are tweaks that we're starting to make, which ultimately align for having great person, great company, great fit, so you can have an impact from day zero, which is what everyone wants.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of going through those motions right now, where in which I've been getting stuck in that same thing of, I should not be hiring fast, but then it's like, okay, wait a second, I just need a body to fill. And then I've made so many of those mistakes where in which now I'm just like, okay, I see that and it makes complete sense. And now let's look at the bank account. You just spend all of that money and all of that time, and if you would have just slowed down, maybe things could have been that much better.
So true. And the hidden cost, which is sometimes I think life is really about delayed gratification. Actually, anything in life is you hire quickly, but then the true hidden cost is the cost of then offboarding is huge. Like, you spend all this time investing in onboarding, all this time offboarding, and then in hindsight, it's like when you see that, you're like, oh, why didn't I just spend 1 more week meeting candidates? And it sounds so obvious, but in the moment, you're like, I need help. I need help. So I think I put that in the bucket of these unteachable truths, things you have to go through before you learn. Like, everyone says, be patient. Everyone says, delayed gratification. Everyone says, hire fast or hire slow, fire fast, but no one does it until they experience it. It's these unteachable truths.
Yeah, that's for sure. Very intrigued about your business. What is the founding story of Doola?
A lot of people hear this and they either feel bad or say you're stupid, or a combination. We actually spent $30,000 on legal fees to get the first company set up. And that was because lawyers charge by the hour. Good lawyers, over $1,000 an hour. I'm not saying lawyers shouldn't exist, but for one-time processes, which can be automated, probably shouldn't be paying $1,000 an hour. Use the lawyer for other asymmetric downside type events, and they serve a purpose there. But 10 emails to a lawyer, that's $10,000 right there per hour. Bookkeeper, accountant, payroll, registered agent. Next thing you know, not only are you not spending time on the business, you're just doing all this back office, but also you spent a lot of money and the first business didn't work. So shut it down. Next time around, didn't know what to build, but was almost certain, hey, we're going to have to fork out $30,000 again. But then was like, wait a second, do you really have to? And I knew, again, candidly, nothing about entity formation or bookkeeping or tax, but I thought, why can't we have this Stables Easy button? Or why can't it all be in one place, this one-stop shop? And when we started, it was a way to get non-US residents to set up in the US because there was less competition. Sure. You have to niche down as a startup. Today, we've now done over 10,000 businesses, 175 countries, and we specialize in helping e-commerce businesses on Amazon or Shopify with their bookkeeping and their taxes and forming an entity. So the goal is you need to scale your business. You can't be managing your books on your own. You want peace of mind when it comes to taxes. And if you don't have an entity, you should be compliant there too. So we call it this business in a box for e-commerce. Whether you're starting, we'll get you to your first sale as fast as possible with a bank account. And if you're scaling, we'll help you do it without the guesswork. You have analytics, you can manage your books better and actually understand where should I pour fuel to add more fire and scale the business faster.
That's so interesting. Talking about pivoting, right? So you go from this like massive market, which is international, and now you are focused on like Amazon folks. Now, just a question though: how do you go from this grand vision of I'm going to conquer the world to let me just niche down to these two very specific segments?
I think this is another unteachable truth. Everyone says niche down, the riches are in the niches. And I do think there's two sides to this coin. The first is niching does help because if you market to everyone, you can build something mediocre for many or spectacular for a select few.
Yep.
And there's this analogy or this example I love where let's say you sell time management software. Like it's computer software that helps you save time, and that's $20. If you sell time management software for B2B sales reps, all of a sudden you can charge $100 just by adding 4 words on because wait, it's made for me. Like you made it just for me. It's not just that plain software. And then if you add for enterprise rep selling garden tools, if you're that garden tool sales rep at Home Depot doing $1 million contracts, you might pay $100,000 for tooling that can make you more productive because you're dealing with $1 million contracts. Exact same software, you just niche down. So for us, we realized, wait a second, we were selling to everyone, anyone from anyone who needs a company, which means when you're on the other side, there's no way to cut through the noise. So the truth is, we serve SaaS businesses, we serve consulting businesses, but I'd say less of a pivot, more of just honing in on a niche. And the way we actually found the niche is, this is the strategy, the other side of the coin. You can go broad to go niche. That means put yourself out there, see what happens. And what we realized is without specific direct marketing or even focus, about a quarter of our businesses were in e-commerce. So we were clearly solving this underserved need. And now we can start to point the arrows in that direction, sharpen the pencil, hone in the scope or hone in the focus on the camera, and really attack that niche while still serving others. But I do think the well is really deep in e-commerce and there's a huge ton of potential there.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. So you've worked with about 10,000 businesses. How did they find out about you?
The 3 main channels we used to scale to 10,000 customers were paid marketing, direct, which is word of mouth, and then partnerships. So I'll run through each of those. Paid marketing is, for our business, very intent-based. You go to Google and say how to start an LLC or how to register an LLC in the US. Very intent-based. We'll put money up. There's an ad there. The second is direct or word of mouth. Founders know founders. If you have an incredible experience with us, you're going to tell a friend because your friend's going to ask, and people want to refer things that they like, but the bar is high. Think about the last time you referred a product. You have to really like it because you're putting your neck and reputation on the line. The third is partnerships, where let's say you are someone who is teaching people how to start a business on Shopify or an agency that's helping Amazon businesses scale. You have people who need help with either bookkeeping or taxes, or they need to get their entity set up to even work with you. So you could try to build a Doola, or hey, here's our partner Doola. They'll answer all these questions for you, and we give them a very generous commission and a discount to the customer. So customer wins because they're problem solved and they get a discount. The partner wins because they get a juicy commission and the problem solved. And we win because we get to work with more founders and we have more revenue too.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how did you define these 3, channels? I'm of course assuming that you all had tried a lot of different things, made a lot of mistakes, and then come to this. But what was that in just terms of trying and making those mistakes that made you all really finally decide that, hey, that these are our 3 main channels?
To start, it's brutal. It's do things that don't scale, try whatever sticks. That means hundreds of DMs on Twitter just asking, hey, do you know someone who's looking to start? That means trying paid ad campaigns just to see getting traffic to a landing page. And then the iterative process that allowed us to figure out partnerships work well is we just started to hear from customers. I heard about you through, and they were, for example, an Amazon coach. And then we realized, wait a second, we could try to go market to each of the individual students, or let's just go partner with the coach. So at that point, now the more tactical question we ask ourselves is, even if a channel works, so for example, we've tested Facebook ads or we've tested Bing ads, even if you do get some return on that channel, if you could put that dollar to another channel and get 3 times the return, you should actually completely kill the channel with the immediate one-to-one and put all of your eggs in that bucket. And that's actually something which has been a bit counterintuitive to learn. It sounds obvious now, but cut everything that's doing not well and pour all your energy into the ones that are. So even in the split I told you, I would love to get rid of paid and focus on word of mouth because it's free acquisition, and partnerships because you build your brand together. Rising tide lifts all boats. But you're totally right. Now it sounds very crisp and clean. 3 buckets, 33% for each. Truthfully, we've tried a ton of different things, and now we're really trying to dial in on most ROI in the certain specific places, because the truth is, even one extra channel is mind share that you're spending there. It's people, it's resources, and spend going there as well. So ultimately, I think do more but better, quality over quantity, and less is more.
Yeah. What I find so interesting with your answer is the fact that you referenced twice that listen to your customer and you really understand where they're coming from. Did you build out like an internal process for you to really figure that out in just terms of how do I really communicate with my customers, especially at the scale that you're running at?
I asked someone recently, what's the biggest mistake founders make when they are at the Series A, Series B stage? So let's say after you found product market fit, meaning there's people need this thing, and maybe the typical sign of that's $1 million in annual recurring revenue. So after you find that sign, what's the biggest mistake people make? And they said, you forget about the customer. And we made that mistake. I made that mistake where you think you've just figured it out. So let's go sit in our castle in our computers and just start building what we think looks pretty or is cool. And what we realized is, wait a second, we've gotten too far removed. So one thing I did about now close to a year ago is I just decided I've gotten too far removed. I'm going to email every single customer who starts with us or cancels with us and ask them in a personal email, why did you start? Where did you find us? Or why did you cancel? Do you have any feedback? Now, not everyone replies, of course, but you then have, and I have at any given moment, 10 to 50 threads with customers, just via email, catching up, chatting. And that to me is at least the process for now. Now, I think when you're starting, I do remember you treat every lead like it's the last lead on earth. I have this one moment in my head. I remember when I think we had like less than 10 customers, and I used to have, actually, I have it right here. I'll show you as a memento. I keep this case. There's a little case here, which has this stand here. So I actually got that so that no matter what I was doing, I could have intercom up, which is our web chat with the bubble. And when a message came, I could grab it and start typing. So I remember there was this lead who came in. I think he was based in the Middle East or Asia. And I used to text him all day. I would wake up to text him. I would go to sleep, text him. We weren't even dating or anything, right? Like I was texting him like this was like a 15-year marriage or something. But no, literally just any message, do whatever it takes to close them. And we eventually did. But it's through those interactions you learn about why the customer wants you. You learn a ton from those interactions. So this is more a lesson or reminder to myself is do not get removed from the customer ever. That doesn't mean, you have to do things that are unscalable forever. Maybe in the future, instead of doing one-on-one customer calls, you do group calls, right? Yeah. Simple piece of leverage or scale, and you're learning how to do that. But don't forget about the customer. Reminder for myself there.
Yeah, that's awesome. You spoke about working with e-commerce businesses. How do those businesses really think about formation, right? Like, is it that now they have something that they're testing, and this is now selling, now I have to figure this out, and then they get in touch with you? Or is it like the other way around, where in which you are already in their mind or have gotten in their mind as they're, of course, doing things?
Ultimately, any business, but especially an e-commerce business, when you're starting, your first goal is to get your first sale.
Yeah.
Right? You want to pick your product, pick your niche, pick your market, but you need to get that first sale. Now, to get the first sale, what you need, working backwards, is you need a payment processor. So if you're on Shopify, you want Shopify payments. If you're on Amazon, you need your Amazon storefront set up. Now, to work backwards, Amazon or Shopify payments will require a US business bank account, and they'll require an EIN or employee identification number. So to get the bank account, you need an EIN. To get the EIN, you either technically can be a sole prop in the US, but typically you're going to want a business. You're going to need an LLC. And to form the LLC, you'll also need this thing called a registered agent. And then if you have an LLC, you have tax filing requirements depending on where you live and where you're based. And then now that you have a business with the goal of doing revenue, you should probably have bookkeeping in place as well. So the moment comes from, hey, I know I need to get the first sale. Working backwards, the LLC is a means to an end to the EIN, which is a means to an end to the bank account, which is a means to the end to the payment. But once you get to first sale, the next goal, because I don't know anyone who's just sold one thing and said, I'm done. The goal is you want to try to scale this thing. And again, you don't need to scale to billions. It could be 10,000 per month, which is life-changing revenue. But when you are scaling, that is where the only way you can scale, you can only manage what you can measure. You need to know your numbers. And that is what bookkeeping is. It's knowing your numbers. And then really what bookkeeping is is it's preparing your financial statements for tax filings. And look, hate it or love it, there's two certainties in life, death and taxes. You're going to have to file taxes. So why make it painful? Why pay for catch-up bookkeeping? Just get your bookkeeping in order.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Awesome. Arjun, would love to learn, right? You've gone through this extremely interesting journey, gone from, texting your first few customers all day, all night to now having 10,000 plus customers, of course, like working with you. What is the scrappiest story you have while you were building?
One thing which I truly believe about, I'll say I truly believe about life, but especially in startups, is you can get in touch with anyone in the world with one email and 20 follow-ups. So the key is a lot of people will send the email, but they won't follow up 20 times. And I can think of this one example. This showed me the power of I can get in touch with anyone, and I think I can close any partnership with enough time. We had this partner with one of the top blogs for putting out content on how to start an LLC education. And I saw his site and I reached out and didn't get a response. And I followed up. I have a screenshot of this where I actually put red dots counting. There's over 30 emails in the thread. And he started to, after a couple of emails, respond saying, he actually said, I'm not interested the first time. I followed up with a different pitch. After about 30 emails, he finally said, hey, let's chat. By the way, you have some talent for following up in a non-aggressive way that actually made me respond. And ultimately, he's a partner that still exists today. So that was one example, but it stood out to me of the sale is made in the follow-up. And now I know stats around this where 95% of buyers aren't ready to buy on the first purchase. It takes 7 impressions before you're actually going to purchase from a marketing perspective. So now I know these things of, when you send the email, it's your priority, but that other person could be on vacation, between meetings. They might not be inbox 0. I'm inbox 0. They could be inbox 10,000. All of these things are at play where ultimately, if you believe you have something valuable, it's your duty, your responsibility, your destiny, whatever you want to call it, to follow up. So that example just stands out to me because now I know, even if someone says no, it's no right now.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean if they say no, you have to keep bugging them, but snooze and 6 months later, just keep a relationship. You never know when the time is right. The sale is made in the follow-up.
That's amazing. Arjun, as founders, we get a ton of advice. What's the one biggest piece of BS advice that you've gotten?
Hire good people and step away and let the manager do their thing. Because ultimately, that's the classic advice which anyone hears around scaling or growing a business is, get out of the way, hire good people, let them do their thing. Now, there's nuance here, of course. You should hire good people. You should stay out of their way so that you're not interfering. But a couple things. I think micromanaging is a terrible word because how are you supposed to give feedback or guidance without knowing the details? That's not micromanaging. That's called knowing the details.
Yeah.
And another thing is no one else is going to have the context or visibility that you will have on everything. So there's a difference between delegation and abdication. Delegation is, hey, here's a task, which I think ideally you can do better than I can. So run with it, own it. Abdication is go do it and forgetting about it. Then you're just abdicating your responsibility there. So with all that, I actually thought that was the advice of, just hire people and step out of it. But if you do that, then you look back 6 months later and you're like, wait, what was happening? But it's actually, I wouldn't even say that person's fault. It's your fault. You completely stepped away. So with that now, I think the best analogy I've thought of is this concept of editing versus writing, where when you're starting a business, you're writing everything. You're writing essays, you're writing paragraphs, you're writing tweets. And then over time, you shift towards editing, where someone else actually takes on the writing, but you never stop editing. You're always editing. And when you start, you're editing, redlining full papers. Eventually, you might be editing once a month, just changing a title. And I think that's the shift where depending on someone's task relevant maturity, how junior they are, how senior they are, you have to keep editing. But I realize now if I'm writing in too many areas, not only am I a bottleneck, but it means you haven't found the right person for that role too.
I see that. That's fair. Arjun, the one thing that is not spoken about loud is about managing mental health as a founder. How do you manage your mental health?
The biggest thing, and this is my mantra or slogan, is sharpen your body to sharpen your mind. The two things are so intertwined, where my favorite example of this is if you actually just put a pen between your mouth, it increases your oxytocin because your face and your body thinks you're smiling like this. So you actually become happier. And that it's a complete hack, but your body influences your emotional state. And the biggest thing I found is that there's tons of stress in startups. And I ultimately think that the way I'm able to regulate my stress is through a lot of focusing on my health. It's a long-term game too. So I know that you can go through sprints, but you need to be able to sustain it long-term. And I also think of it more as rather than a balance, which means there's trade-offs where it's not the benefit I get if I exercise for an hour each day. It's not just for the benefits and the endorphins you get. I know I'm a better person the other 23 hours. So that to me, the biggest hack for me has been the days I don't feel like exercising are the days I need it most. And if I do that, I'm better in everything else. And that to me is actually the biggest form of stress relief. Now, you could say like, is that healthy turning to that for stress relief? What I would say is I can think of 50 other things that are way more damaging to turn to for stress relief versus exercise or something. But that's my mantra is like sharpen your body to sharpen your mind. It's this flywheel which makes you better in everything you do.
It's awesome. Arjun, this has been so much fun. I know I have personally learned so much from you. Everything that you were saying, I was sort of reflecting back and like, my God, I've made all those mistakes. How do I fix it now? So thank you so much for this. Very intrigued. What is next for you and what's next for Doola?
What's next for me is likely the same for Doola. The two are very intertwined, which I'm completely okay with. Again, I don't believe in this concept of work-life balance. I believe in integration, where I would only want to do things where I can feel fully immersed. So what's next for me and Doola is we are going to continue to add to the business in a box. The box will continue to grow. It has formation, it has bookkeeping, it has taxes, it has e-commerce analytics, and we'll continue to add to the box. And the ultimate goal is there's 8 billion people on Earth. Half of the world has internet connection that'll only grow. I do believe we can reach 1 billion people. Now, will all of them start businesses? Maybe not. You don't have to start a business, but we can reach that many people and educate them through content, through our marketing, and inspire people to either take that dream idea and turn it into their dream business or scale their existing business. And that to me is a really fun challenge. And it hasn't gotten old yet. Never gets old to get a review from someone saying, you didn't just help me start a company, you helped me make a dream come true. And that's really the most powerful thing that fires up me and the entire team.
That's awesome. Wow. Arjun, how can folks keep up with you and with Doola?
Doola.com. You can book a free demo. You can chat with the team. We do free consultations. One of the only companies that does that. And on social, I'm Arjun Mahadevan on all platforms. And I love to stay engaged there. So please shoot me a note. You can also personally email me. I check every email, arjun@doola.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you once again for, of course, giving me so much of your time. Again, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.